Glover, welcome to Booktopia.
Thank you for having me on.
How does the title of your book relate to the process of ageing?
There is a point in every man's life where his partner looks him in the eyes and says, "You're too old for floppy hair." And, you know, indeed it happened to me. I think my hair dramas begin when I'm about 19 and I go to a suburban hairdresser in Brisbane and say to him, "Look, mate, could I have a Christopher Eschewed's 1920s Cambridge, thanks?" He looked at me askance and I said, you know, Brian Ferry, floppy. "Oh, gotcha, mate." So he cuts my hair with a floppy. And that did me very well, you know, for probably 3 decades. But there is that moment, too old for floppy. The moment came for us when we were watching television and there was a documentary about George Clooney and he was being very sort of charming and politically right on and talking about how he'd had the UN Secretary General to dinner the night before, but in a non-boastful way, you know, just perfect. And he's exactly my age and he's got this sort of beautiful clipped grey hair. And my partner Deborah, she's sort of falling into a reverie. She's watching Clooney describe his house on the Italian lakes and his perfect wine cellar and, you know, all this. And she's looking wistful and she says, "You need a Clooney, you know, you need a Clooney." And I'm not sure whether she's referring to the house on the Italian lakes or the right-on political opinions or the Hollywood career or just the haircut. So I take it she probably means the haircut. I make an appointment. And next thing I know, she's just sent me, I get an email from her, an email from my own partner. We do live in the same house. And it's got no subject line, it's just got a hyperlink. And when I click on the hyperlink, it's a picture of George Clooney with a Clooney. And so I dutifully print this out and I take it to we had the same hairdresser, Deb and I. So I take it to Shane and I hand it over and I say, "Shane, I need one of these, I need a Clooney." And he says, "I know, Deborah's already spoken to me." And so he puts, much to the hilarity of everyone, he sticks it onto his mirror and clips away. And look, I know you won't believe me, and maybe it's grown out a little bit, but as he was doing the work, passers-by in the salon were saying, "My God, he looks like Clooney." And indeed I did. And I said, "Shane, you've made me look like Clooney." And he said, "Well, you just needed to ask." So I do recommend it to anybody. If you want to look like someone, just print it out and take it to your hairdresser.
It's so much simpler for men than it is for women, and that's not fair. But I do notice that hair is a bit of a leitmotif with you, because of course you embarked on that challenge, didn't you?
Yes.
To not wash your hair. Are you still not washing your hair?
I'm still not washing my hair, and yet it's fluffy like a kitten. Look, the book, in this book I do put my body on the line. There is a piece, this sounds disgusting, this is going to put people off. There's a piece about when you get a wart on your hand, how everybody gives you advice, and it's the most bizarre kind of folk remedy, dancing at midnight in graveyards, washing your hands in moonlight, putting banana, you know, there's a million. And so there's a piece where I test all these methods on my own body. There's a piece about my Guinness Book of Records, which I still hold, in which I interview Peter Fitzsimons for the longest radio interview ever in the world, 24 hours with Peter Fitzsimons. I know, not much of it. I said, "Hello, Peter, how are you?" Got another question in it about 16 hours later. But so I do that, the war, and yes, and then I think the biggest challenge of all is this theory that, and it's a good theory, that shampoo is just an absolute rubbish product. It's a myth, it's just detergent. And if you put it on your hair, all it does is strip the oil out of your hair, so just your poor old scalp says, "Oh, there's no oil in my," and produces more oil, which you then use more shampoo to remove, and so this cycle. And the intoxicating idea is that if you don't use the shampoo, true, your hair will get oilier and oilier and greasier and greasier and greasier for 6 weeks. And if you endure, you pass through this period, your scalp gets used to it, stops producing oil, and you enter into this sunny uplands where you never have to use shampoo again. And yeah, we had, at the time, you know, I do a show on Sydney radio, and we had 400 people, I think it was, maybe 600 people, testing out the theory.
I was one of them.
You were one of them. And it works, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does,
It
actually.
does work. I mean, whether you stick to it, I don't know. But no, I think, I can't remember now, maybe 80% of people said their hair was either the same or better without shampoo. So there's a whole aisle of the supermarket which you can ignore. And it's fluffy like a kitten, come on.
I noticed, though, you used the word challenge there, and obviously the record-breaking thing with Peter Fitzsimons was a challenge and a kind of, you know, world-beating achievement. Are you competitive by nature? Is competition important to you?
No, it's not, and I've never been competitive in that way. I'm the sort of person who halfway through a squash game thinks, "Oh, I'm a bit tired now. You take the." No, I'm not, and I think I do these things partly. The whole point of the whole book, or my writing, really, is. I love investigating the little kind of tiny moments of day-to-day life, and whether it's hair or warts or you know, the sort of lovely comedy of marital arguments. The book is really a celebration of functional, vaguely functional families, the sort that we all come from, and how and the kind of comedy of that, and the love that, and you know, the love that keeps us all going, and how it operates in the fun of day-to-day life, I suppose, is what. Sometimes I go into the bookshop, and it's not a criticism of any of these books, which I enjoy reading myself. But half of the bookshop seems to be about the underbelly of society, the true crime novels, and or detective stories and all that. And the other half of the bookshop seems to be about the top end of town, the biographies of Murdoch and Packer and all that. And so few books seem to be about the life that most of us live. And the best compliment I ever get on my writing is someone saying, it felt like you had a tape recorder in our kitchen, or it felt like you had a tape recorder in our car. That these are often stories about my life and my kids and my partner and all that, but they're hopefully stories about all of us and the kind of madness of the way our brains operate and our relationships work.
You say that, what you like is when people say, I feel like you had a tape recorder on in our kitchen, and that there's this kind of sense of celebrating the everyday and ordinary life. And you do take us kind of very much into your domestic world. I mean, I feel that I've sat at your kitchen table. I feel I know the dynamic between you and Deb, your wife. Is there anything that's off limits? Is there anything that you absolutely protect and say, that I'm not going to write about?
I'm interested in things where it's not special to us. If it's entirely kind of intimate and peculiar to us, in some ways there's not much point about writing about it. What's interesting, for instance, with the kids, I suppose, is the most sensitive matter. You're not particularly interested in some sort of oddity of their behaviour. What you're interested in is things in which they're similar to all kids. So there's a piece not in this book, in the previous book, about. And my younger son's a great harmonica player, and he's very interested in music. And so the piece is really about the process by which a kid, when the parents have agreed to go half in something, in his case an amplifier, and it's kind of about the weird process by which they manage to bid up the price of the object that seems like a reasonable thing to pay for an amplifier. So you start off with something that's $200 and you found it on eBay, but then again it's up in the mountains and it'll cost $50 petrol to get there. So really it would be just as good to buy this one that's $250 down the shop. And then a week passes and you've come to terms with the fact that it's going to be $250. But then he says, but I've discovered the one in the shop's missing a valve, and the valve costs $50 anyway. So there's this other one in this other shop which is $300. So, and it's skills that would thrill a QC. Now that actually happened, and it's a true story. But the only point in telling it, I hope, is that it will have resonance. Not all kids are into amplifiers, but if a kid has been going through that same process with a cricket bat or some ballet pumps, or God forbid, a horse. Yeah,
absolutely.
in which the figures are probably in their thousands rather than their hundreds.
I'm nodding in recognition here.
So the only point of telling the story is that the way Joe did that wasn't odd. It was something. It was a kind of human thing.
At the same time, Richard, I mean, it just dazzles me reading this book and your other work. Is there anything that you don't have an opinion on? Is there anything that you don't engage with where you just think, I don't care about that? Because really, you seem to be able to turn your gaze to everything. Every little bit of minutiae of human existence seems to interest you.
No, I think the older you get, the less certain of your opinions you are. I think if by the time you're my age, if you don't have 3 mutually contradictory views on, for instance, the burqa, you're not really trying, And I think on most things I can actually see both sides of it. I kind of understand, and I think this is a product of getting older. You kind of see the compelling arguments on both sides. Not of everything, I think for me personally, I don't get the opposition to gay marriage at all. That's one thing. I don't get it. But I get most things, I think. And I don't think I wouldn't say this book's got a particular lot of sort of political opinions so much as a kind of attitude to life, and maybe a forgiving one. One of the pieces I quite like is there's a piece about the glories of coming second in things. Whenever we have the Olympics, there's this whole rhetoric about gold and gold medals, and athletes are fine, and it's great to see them getting gold, but it's then used as a metaphor, as if there's a really good way of thinking about the rest of life. Sport is a metaphor for the rest of us. Sport is highly entertaining and good to cheer people on, but it's not a metaphor for how most of us should behave. And actually, I think most of us, it's not you get these motivational speakers who come out and fill up the entertainment centre at $5,000 a head, telling people, be the best you can ever be, strive to be number one. I think most of us, we're actually more ambitious than that. We're more ambitious than wanting to be number one in one thing. We want to be quite good at our job. We want to be quite good partners. Well, still understanding when you go for a walk, you can spot the other woman and who's quite attractive, and at least glance at her so surreptitiously your wife won't notice. We want to be quite good partners. We want to be quite good parents. We want to be quite healthy and either go to the gym or walk the dog a couple. What we don't want to be is number one, because all those things about being number one are about being so selective that you let the rest of your life die away. And so it's a kind of plea for the virtues of silver, of a silver medal. And I think that attitude, that kind of is if there's a philosophy running through the book, it's a kind of forgiving gaze, I suppose.
Yeah. So what are the things that are on your mind in this book that kind of are things that you want to air a frustration or a grievance about?
Oh, there's so many. Look, I think there's, a lot of people talk about the prejudice against Generation Y, but there is a prejudice against the middle-aged, I think. I went to Melbourne the other day, and I was interested in buying a T-shirt, and there were sales on. So I'm a cheapskate, so this attracted me. And I walk into the shop, and there's some fantastic T-shirts there, and they're only $12, and the colour suits me perfectly, Caroline, marvels. So I go up to the counter, and as I'm getting up there, I notice that there's a kind of stain on the T-shirt, and I say to the very nice young man, I say, look, this is terrific, but have you got one that doesn't have the stain? And he says, and he pauses, and he looks at me, and he's obviously thinking, how do I explain this to this old dude? And he said, well, they've all got the stain. And I said, why have they all got? He says, well, that's where the pocket was. And I said, what do you mean? He says, the T-shirt is meant to look like this. It's old favourite T-shirt that used to have a pocket, but you've had it for so many years that the pocket's fallen off, and so there's still the slightly darker material where the pocket used to be. That's the whole idea, sir, he said. And I felt so old that I didn't. But I also just imagined the scene in the Chinese factory where these are made, and this sort of representative of Gap or whatever it was saying, so, we want a T-shirt, but we want it stained there where the pocket used to be. And the Chinese factory man saying, well, if you want a pocket, we'll put in a pocket. No, we don't want a pocket. Well, that's fine, we'll make it without the pocket. No, we want the pocket, but... And at this point he thinks, those Westerners, they are insane.